Hey everybody, welcome. My name is Kurt, aka the Vitruvian Game, and I'm here today with my top 10 gateway games, second edition. I did one, I don't know how long ago, and I thought it was long enough ago to do a new one because a lot of new games, of course, were released since the last time I did this. Now, there might be some games that are still in this top 10 that I were in the top 10 last time. Now, I didn't check the last one because I didn't want to be influenced by it. But I can at least remember two, maybe three of them that I think were on there as well. Now, what are gateway games? Very simple. They're introductory games that you can best use to get non-gamers into the hobby or introduce them to the hobby, or just to bring to people who don't play board games normally, which we have to do sometimes here. There are a lot. We are the people. I'm the guy with the board games. I'm the board game guy, and people ask me a lot of times for tips about what games they should bring to a group of people that don't play board games. And in my opinion, these are the best 10 ones that I have in my collection. There might be better ones. It's not that I have all of them or that I know all of them, but these 10 that I'm going to show you are very popular. There are some, of course, that didn't make the list that are also great, but they're more in the party game style. I'm talking about games like Dixit and Telestrations, for example. They are awesome for people who don't normally play board games, but they're more in the party games direction. There is one in this list as well that can be placed in that series, but I couldn't leave that one out because I had a lot of success with that one. So without further ado, let's get started with this list, and let's start with number 10, which is, you might already have seen it, which is, I put this on number 10, so the lowest number, because this might be the most difficult one to teach. But this one is so important to the hobby because there are so many great deck building games. I like deck building games quite a bit. I love Clank, I love the legendary encounter system, all that kind of jazz. But as an introductionary to the system of deck building, I, of course, still go back to Dominion. Now, Dominion is the mother of all deck builders, that's how they call it. This is deck building in its purest form. You have a bunch of cards in the middle of the table, you have a starting deck with basic cards, you buy cards from the middle. There are money cards, there are action cards, point cards, and maybe some other things that that types of cards. But in the base game, it's quite straightforward, and it's not too difficult. The theme is not really there, but in order to teach the mechanic or the mechanism of Dominion, it's not that important, the theme, because they're focusing, the first time they're playing a deck builder game, they're focusing on how this thing works, how this attempts to making combinations, good combinations that work, that work, they're trying to figure that one out, and they're not really thinking about the theme at that moment. Doesn't mean that I don't think that theme can help in a gateway game, that's for sure. I would maybe also consider Quest for El Dorado, which is right here, which is also a deck builder in which you're trying to get to El Dorado first. But still, it has a little bit more to it, of course. It has the movement, and it has special abilities and some rules with the cards that you can keep. This one, straightforward. You play cards, buy cards, get more actions, and that's it. You draw a new hand of cards. So that's my number 10 gateway game, Dominion. Alright, let's get to number 9. Number 9, also a little bit higher or lower on the list, because it's also a little bit more difficult to explain. Also, even I know a lot of people that watch these videos are real gamers, and this game is no challenge for them. But for a new player, trying to program or to think about what's going to happen, what in the future, might be a challenge for the first time. And I love this game that does this. It's very tongue-in-cheek, a great team. It looks awesome on the table, and I'm talking about Colt Express. So Colt Express is a game in which each player plays a bandit, and they're going to rob this train. And the cool thing about the train is, and I'm going to open the box here, it is a 3D train. So you have the locomotive, and you have a bunch of these carts. Depending on the number of players, there will be more or less. And each player will have a deck of cards that have various actions. Moving, climbing up and down, shooting, punching, picking up loot. So the goal of the game, very simple, is to have the most loot at the end of the game. But the cool thing is, you have these cards and you draw a certain amount of these cards, and you play them one by one in turn order. And sometimes you see what other players are playing, but sometimes you go into a tunnel and it's dark, so you play your card face down. So you don't always know what is going to happen. Also, you're limited to the cards that you have in your hand. You might want to do something, but you didn't draw the card. So it is a little bit chaotic sometimes, especially if you play with the more players you play, it gets more chaotic. But it's such a fun theme of a game. It looks great, and it's a great way to get people into this kind of programming games where you have to think about actions, reactions, and consequences. Very fun game. I love this game, especially with new players. Colt Express, my number 9. And then we go to number 8, because that's the logic way to do. The logic thing to do. The next one is the one that I mentioned before. This is actually more of a party game. But I've played this with 4 players as well, and I introduced even my parents to it. Even my father, which is normally something that's not possible. So this one, I believe, does its job great, perfectly, and I'm hoping that there will be an expansion with new cards soon. And the game that I'm talking about is the party game Just One. Now, Just One is such a smart game, and it's just a silly small idea that turned into a great game. So each time you play, you're going to have, I think, 13 cards that you randomly have in a pile, and each time the player whose turn it is going to take the top card of the pile and put it in front of them in one of these plastic holders here. So you place the card like this, and then you say a number 1 to 5, because you have 5 words. Now, I know this is the Dutch version, but you have the English version as well, of course. So you say a number 1 to 5, there's a word there. So let's say in this example, ghost. So the word is ghost. I don't know that because my card is like this, but the other players know that. And they are going to try to make me guess the word ghost. How will they do it? Well, each player will have their marker and will have one of these as well. And they're going to write a one-word clue. When they all have written down a clue, the person who has to guess the word has to close their eyes, and other players are going to show them the words they written down. If there are double words, the same words, or words that are have the same words in it, like for example prince and princess, those are removed, and the person that has to guess the word has less clues to guess from after he can open his eyes again. And so you have this thing of you don't want to write down an obvious word. But if you don't write down an obvious word, it might be a little bit too much out of the box, your word. And so it's really cool. And sometimes you take a chance. You're like, okay, I'm going to write the word. You have ghost. I'm going to write buster or spooky or whatever. And somebody else might just have the same idea, and then you have less clues to give to the player whose turn it is. Really cool game, very fun, and so accessible. Played it on my birthday in July with a lot of people who normally don't play games, and they were all just enamored with it. So that's my number 8. Number 7 is also a very cool game, and this one is also a smart design in my opinion. It's a little bit, sometimes the first time is a little bit harder to grasp. It's because it's like a puzzle, and the first time you're playing you might have open spots because you just didn't see the total picture in your head before you started. But then you just play a second game and then it's just fine. And the cool thing about this, it's a cool board game, and it uses a very simple mechanism of dominoes. This is called King Domino. So in King Domino you are going to try to build your kingdom, which will be I think a 5x5 grid. There's a way to have a 7x7 grid, maybe in 2 players, I'm not sure completely. But each time, and this is also some kind of drafting, so each turn there will be a couple of these domino tiles with different types of terrain on it. Water, desert, a field, and you also have mines and forest and all that stuff. So each player will have a meeple, and they are going to place a meeple on the tile they want one by one. But of course there's only one person for each, or one tile for each person. And they're lying in order of how much points they will score at the end of the game, of how rare they are. And so you place your meeple on one of the tiles. If it's your turn, because you go from up to down, if it's your turn, you take your piece, you place it in your kingdom with some rules about placement. They have to be adjacent to this. One part has to be adjacent to the same type of terrain, for example. And then you put your meeple. There is other 4 tiles already open, and then you put your meeple on the next one you want to have from that row of tiles. And again, deciding, will I go for the point scoring one, but then next turn I will get to choose last, or will I go for a lesser good one, but I can pick earlier? So it's that decision that you have to make. Scoring is very simple. There are cards with tiles with a crown on it. For each terrain of the same type, you score the number of squares times the number of crowns in that terrain, from that terrain of course, and you add up everything. As I said, the first play might be a challenge because you don't see the puzzle immediately, but after that it is just a game that goes so smooth, so fast, so fun. King Domino, my number 7. Number 6 is an older game, which I think this year got a reprint, a deluxe version reprint, which I probably won't buy because I'm very happy with this one, although the reprint has its expansion, which is hard to get included in the game, but I'm happy with the base game as it is. And this is a game where it is a kind of an area control game if you think about it. It has dice, which is always fun. People like dice, so each player has their pool of dice in their color, and well, I'm talking about Las Vegas. So you have a dice pool, and you have a starting player, and you have 6 casinos in Las Vegas, and these boards here, and you place them from 1 to 6, so each casino has a number. So you place them on the table 1 to 6, and each round players will roll all the dice they have or have left, and they will pick one result. So that you order them by result, 1, 2, and so on, and you pick one result and you place all of the dice of that result on the casino with that number. If everybody, so you keep going, you keep re-rolling the other dice until everybody's out of dice, and if that happens, you will check each casino and you will see who has the most dice of their color on the casinos, and there will be money lying on each casino, and the person with the most dice will get the highest valued card. The cool thing is, if two players have the same number of dice on a casino, they cancel each other out. So you might have a casino that has 3 red and 3 green dice on it, but the blue player, who has only 1, will get the big reward, and the other ones won't get anything. That's pretty cool. You can play a little bit more advanced, giving each player 2 of these white dice, which don't help you get control of a territory because it's not in your color, but they work as an extra player, so you can strategically place these dice on casinos trying to get, well, to keep other people from getting the big money on that casino. Very cool game, very easy to teach, and this is also one that people will immediately want to play a second time and maybe a third time. I really like this game. Las Vegas, my number 6. And then we go to the top 5, folks. And my top 5 is also an older game. I think it's one of my first 5 games that I owned when I entered this hobby. And it's still one of my favorite games. It's still one of my favorite gateway games for sure. And that's mostly because of the team. Now, this might also be a little bit harder to teach, but it is. The good news about this one is that this is cooperative, so you can help people. Now, you don't want to be a kingmaker, or how do you call it? I just let them do whatever they want, but I'm there to help them if they have a rules question. But I'm not the one who's telling other people what to do in this game when they play the first time, especially not when they've played the first time. Let them learn themselves, because the team helps so much in this game that people are really invested in this game immediately. I'm talking about Flashpoint Fire Rescue. This is a Dutch version, in which you are trying to put down a fire. So this house is burning. This is the base game. I do have most of the expansions, but you will have a house with squares, and it's kind of a grid because you have these numbers here, 1 to 8 and 1 to 6, and you have dice, or an 8-sided die and a 6-sided die. So what you're doing is each turn, normally, because you have these characters that have more or less action points, but normally you will have 4 action points to spend if it's your turn. You can use an action to move. You can use an action to put down a fire, or you need 2 to put down a complete fire. You can turn it to smoke, but if smoke touches fire, it turns into fire. The goal of the game is to find and rescue 7 people in the house. So you have these random placed points of interest, or persons of interest, which might be false alarms, but you're trying to get to them, and you have to get them out of the house, which takes more effort, because if you're walking around, it takes you 1 action to move 1 square, but if you are dragging someone out of the house, it costs you 2 action points, so it goes slowly sometimes while you're trying to get control of the fire. Walls can get damaged. You put black cubes on the walls. If all the cubes are gone from the supply, then the house collapses. If 4 people die in the fire, then it's also game over and you lose. This game, especially because of its theme, is so cool. So you see the fire spreading. After each player's turn, you roll both dice, the 6-sided and the 8-sided. You see where they meet up, the numbers, and that's where a fire happens. If there's already fire, you get an explosion. Mayhem. You have a fire truck outside that you can use, which covers more areas, but still you have to aim right. You also do that with the dice rolling. You can play more advanced if you feel like you've played it enough. You can play advanced mode where there are dangerous materials and other crazy stuff, and then you have a bunch of expansions as well. But the base game for me is an awesome co-op gateway game because of the team and because of actually the pretty simple gameplay. That's my number 5, Flashpoint. Number 4 is a special one. I've mentioned this game a couple of times before on the channel, and that's because I like the game so much. It was maybe one of the biggest surprises for me when I played it the first time, because this is in its base, it's actually a kids game. It's for children, and it's in the line of this this line called, I don't remember, Tales and Games. And they are made like books here, and there is a bunch of these. But this one, The Hare and the Tortoise, this one is exceptional. So this game, in this game, all these animals, the hare and the tortoise, but also the fox and the wolf, so all these characters from these fairy tales, they are racing each other. You will make a track with these tiles here, and they're going to race each other. But you're not an animal. You're betting on an animal, or maybe two. So at the beginning of the game, you will have cards, and I'm checking if I can find them. That's the downside when you borrow this to someone else sometimes. So each animal will have a card. At the beginning of the game, each player will get one of these randomly, and they can look at it, but the other players don't. And that's the animal that they want to win the race. Alright? But they're not controlling only that animal. They're controlling the other ones. Also, from their starting hand, each player will choose one more card, one more animal. They could choose the same one and place a double bet on the same one, or they could choose another, the wolf, for example, and try to get that one also on the podium, which there really is one. There's a podium. So during your player's turn, players are allowed to play up to 4 cards. And those cards have to be of the same animal. So for example, I have a bunch of wolves here. I could let the wolf move quite a bit. But you play them first, you play them on the table. As soon as there are 4 cards of the same animal, or as soon as there are 8 cards in total on the table, then all animals are going to move. And the cool thing is, each animal has their own way of movement, which is on this little player aid card as well. So, for example, the hare will move 2 spaces if there is at least 1 card at the middle of the table. But if 4 cards are played with the hare, and the hare at that moment is already in the lead, then it won't move. The turtle will, if you play 0 to 3 cards, or if there are 0 to 3 turtles played, they always move 1. They go slowly, but they go, even with 0 cards. If there are 4 cards played, then they go faster, they go 2. The wolf, he goes a little bit slower. 1 or 2 cards is only 1 move, 3, 4 cards is 2 or 3 moves. But if someone plays a wolf with a howling symbol on it, like this, then only the wolf gets to move, because the other animals are going to hide. The fox always moves the number of cards of the fox on the table, and the sheep moves the number of cards plus 1, so he's going really fast. But there are 2 rivers on the track, and each time he comes on a river tile, he has to stop because he wants to drink. And the cool thing is, it's so easy to explain. It's like a story. The wolf howls, animals get scared, they hide, only the wolf moves. The hare is cocky, he thinks he's the fastest one, so he moves. But if he's on the lead and you play too many cards, he's not going to move at all. And so you're trying to play the right cards at the right time, trying to get the most points because you want your animal to be the first one there. So you might want to do some bluffing and move some other creatures first, so other people think that you're betting for that creature, but you're not. So very cool game. I really love this game. This was high on my top 100 list as well, folks. But this also is a gateway game that never gets played only once. People always, also the first time, they're also trying to figure out what's going on, how do I do this, but then they want a second game and they're right at it and they're going for the win. That's my number 4, Hare and Tortoise. Yes, very cool game. My number 3 is also a classic. I think this one has won Spiel des Jahres someday, a long time ago. Well, not that long, but longish still. It is a micro game, as they call it. It's only, I think, 18 cards, and this is a world famous one. Love Letter, folks. Love Letter is a great introductory gateway game. It's so simple, right? And you just you have one card in your hand, you draw a card, and you play one of those two cards, and they each do whatever they do. You have a handy overview card of what's all the cards that are in the game. It's written on the cards what they do. You're trying to be the last man standing. You do that by, or at least the last man standing with the highest number in your hand. And the highest number, of course, is the princess. But the princess, you can never discard it or you're out of the game. And so this is pretty cool. So you have these guards. With guards, you can guess what other people have in their hand. If they do, they are out of the game. You have chambermaids, or I'm not sure how it's called in English. I have the Dutch version, who protect you for a round. A baron who lets you see another player's card and compare values of the other card you have in your hand with the other player. If you have the highest card, the other player is out of the round. And there are many of these abilities. Very cool. There is a new edition out that you can play with more players that have some new roles in it. I might get that one, but I still love this base game. You could also get a very strangely titled Love Letter Batman, because this is pretty cool. It actually does the same thing. It has the same... the cards have the same abilities. They have different names, of course. You have Batman and Bane. I'm sorry, I always say Bale because of the actor. And Poison Ivy and Two-Face. But the cool thing is, if the guard, or in this case, if you play Batman and you guess what another player has in their hand, you get a point. That's not in the base game. In the normal game, you only score a point if you're the last man standing, or if you, at the end of a round, if all cards are depleted, you still have the highest card in your hand. But the most exciting thing about this game is when you guess what another player has in their hand, and if you do that with the Batman edition, you score a point. And you might score a point later for being the last man standing as well. So that's pretty cool. Also, the team might be more interesting for other players besides of the this Renaissance Love Letter team. All right, but that's my number 3, folks. Love Letter, a great introductory game. Really, yeah. Number 2. This has been also a success. Always. We still play this even with gamers because it's so simple to take out to play very quickly. It's almost in the title that it's quickly. Now, roll and write games are popular at this moment. They are the bomb at this time. They're releasing roll and writes like crazy now, and they're awesome as well. Well, a lot of them are very, very good, really good. But this one, for me, this one takes the basic of that game, and that's why it's a gateway game. So it's just roll and write some numbers in order on your tableau, and I'm talking about quicks. It's a quick game. This is the deluxe version, so it has dice tray in the box, but it also has this cardboard that you can write on and then wipe again. You have these pens in it as well. So it's very simple. You have a bunch of dice, so 4 colors, 4 rows, and you have a die for each of these rows, as you can see, and the 2 top ones, they go from left to right, from low to high, and you have to write the numbers from left to right. So players are going to roll these 4 dice together with 2 white dice, and then the starting player has to, at least they have to write something down, and they can either choose the combination of the 2 white dice, which have a number. No, I'm wrong. They have to how was it again? Yeah, you can have the combination of the white dice, then that one you can write down in any color, so you don't have to choose a color. Or they have to choose a combination of a white die and a colored die, for example, a red 9. The other players, they are allowed as well to take the white result of the 2 white dice and place it anywhere. So that's also pretty cool that you have something to do in the other player's turn. and you're trying to cross off the numbers as soon as you have enough numbers in a row. If you roll a 12 or a 2, depending on the color, then you can close the line, then that die goes out of the game, and as soon as 2 rows are closed, the game ends. Also, as soon as someone has 4 squares crossed off here, which means that they couldn't write down the number, or they did not want to. As soon as someone has 4 of these, which are -5 for each one, then also the game also ends. Very cool game, very fun, quicks. It's an awesome gateway game. So simple. It's what it says on the box as well. Fast, easy, and exciting. They're correct. Sometimes they lie on these boxes, but this one, it's true. That's why it's my number 2. And now my number 1, folks, and it might not be the simplest one. It's not the one that's the easiest to explain, but it has a cool theme. It has a well-known mechanic a little bit. It feels like you're playing bingo. And there's another game that has the same idea. That's really bingo for board gamers. It's called Rise of Augustus or Augustus. Didn't put that on the list. I think it was on the list last time, but it might be just the next step game. But this one is actually also from a publisher that mostly does children's games, but this one is a family game of them, and it's called Karuba. Now, in Karuba, each player will have a board, which is the jungle, and each player will have at the same spot, so all 4 boards will be the same. They will, on the beach, they will have 4 of these explorers, and of 4 different colors, and each color will also have a temple in the forest. And the goal is to get your explorers to their colored temple. The way to do that is pretty neat. So one player will have a bunch of tiles face down. So you have these tiles here, and they are numbered, and they have roads on them. And so one player will have them face down, the other one will have them face up, numbered from 1 to 40 or 38 or 36, I don't know. And the one player with the face down tiles will draw one tile randomly and will say the number. Each player will take the same tile and place it somewhere on their board in one of the squares. They can choose wherever they want to place it. But they're trying to make a road to the temples, right? So each tile will have a straight road, a T-crossing like this, or a crossroads, or whatever, or a corner. And so you're placing these tiles on there as well. Now, in order to move your explorers, if you can decide not to place a tile and remove it from the game. If you do, then you can move one explorer up to the number of exits on the tile that you're removing. So in this example, 3. This is the hardest part to explain. The first time you're playing this, players not always understand. If they're not board gamers and they don't play games, they might have a problem with this. But that's over very quickly. So you remove one of these tiles and you get to move one of the explorers, and you're trying to be the first one to reach these temples, because the first player to reach a certain temple will get the most valuable artifact of that color. On the way you can also find gold, which is this one, or diamonds, which are also worth points at the end of the game. You have to build this puzzle, figure out a way to get every explorer to their temple without blocking each other, without having dead ends, while maybe picking up some of these gold pieces and diamonds, and also not standing in the way of your meeples, because you cannot step over another meeple on your board, so you have to move the other one first before you can get through the other one. So very cool game. It's very fun to see your puzzle build, and even though every player gets the same tiles each turn, you will see 4 different boards at the end of the game, 4 different ideas of how they were going to build their roads, and that's great. Also, this one I think I've never played only once with new players. They always ask for a rematch, because after one game the click is there, mostly after a couple of turns already. The click is there and they want to try to win that's for sure. So that's my number one, folks. This has been a blast already to play this one, and I'm going to play this many more times in the future. Karuba, my number one gateway game. And that ends the list, folks. We're done. So that's my number one. Yeah, so these games, I think you cannot do anything wrong with these games if you are going to play with new players. Dominion might be the hardest one to get to the table or to get people to play, because they lack a little bit of team. And so you could try to use a Quest of El Dorado, which might be a little bit more difficult to teach. But it might be easier to teach with the team in the game. So yeah, I don't know which games were in my last top 10 of this. There are a lot of games that still might are very good for this, but I checked my complete collection, and these are the 10 ones that I think fit this description of a gateway game the best way. Takenoko is pretty good. Camel Up can be a very good one. Even a la carte, go check that one out. You're cooking and with these pans on the cooking stove. It's a kid's game, but it works. And as I said, Dixit, for example, is also a great one for people that don't play games. Magic Maze might be also one that's close to the top 10 as well. Trying to check this out. Yeah, I like to do Flamme Rouge as well with new people, but it's a little bit more tinky, but it works. Anyway, these were my top 10 gateway games. Let me know what you think of it. Also, let me know what games that are on this list or not on this list you use as a gateway game. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, feel free to give a thumbs up. It's always appreciated. If you want to see more on this channel and you're not subscribed yet, push that subscribe button, maybe even the bell icon, so you can see whenever I post a new video. And besides that, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this top 10. I hope you liked it, and see you the next time with more top 10s probably. Thanks and bye bye.